Hey guys, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. I hope everyone is doing good, and I have an interesting story today. Dan from Washington wanted to share his experiences that took place in the state of Idaho. It's pretty common to hear these types of stories from hunters all over North America, and I constantly hear people say there are areas that nobody goes into due to the strange activity that takes place. The Sasquatch like to find areas that have the resources needed to survive and the cover to remain undetected. But with so much of that around, it makes me wonder why they choose these specific areas other than the obvious. Is there some type of energy, resource, or connection to these areas with the Sasquatch? Another theory people have speculated is there could be rogue males that are roaming the forest looking for a clan of their own. It could be possible if they are traveling alone and do not have a group of their own to rely on, they could become more dangerous and hostile. This experience forever changed Dan's views of the forest and altered the course of his favorite outdoor hobby. I want to thank Dan for sending in his story, and if you like this type of content and enjoy learning things about the Sasquatch, then please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Alright everybody, let's dive into this next Bigfoot encounter from the state of Idaho. Hey Dan, welcome to Sasquatch Theory, and I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, no problem. If you could, would you tell us about your experiences out in the backcountry of Idaho?
Yeah, you bet. So this happened it'll be 4 weeks ago tomorrow. My dad and I were out for our annual 2-week elk hunt. I go back home to Idaho. Well, I call all of Idaho home. That's where I grew up. We were in North Idaho this year just because of tag availability. We're usually in central Idaho in the wilderness. So we just picked a different spot this year. So my dad had arrived a few days early prior to opening day to scout the area since we hadn't hunted there. Due to work, I wasn't able to arrive until the day before opening day. Met my dad at the base of the mountains that we'd be climbing up into and setting up base camp for about a week and a half, it turned out. I can tell you one thing, if anybody listening hasn't been in the Pacific Northwest, it's hard to imagine some of these places you get into, how remote and rugged. I've been hunting my whole life. I'm 40 years old, had my hunting license since I was 11, and been in some bad terrain. I fought wildland fire for numerous years. I was a logger for a while, paying for school. And when I got to the base of those mountains, I looked up and I looked at my dad and kind of shook my head and said, really? Because this was some of the steepest, heavily wooded terrain I have ever seen in my life. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. But anyways, we head off up the Forest Service logging roads, just winding our way up through the mountains. Chatted with some few hunters on the way up that were lower down, just trying to find a spot where we could set up camp. These mountains were so steep that you could get up on a ridge line, but there were times where, other than the road, that was the peak of the mountain. There wasn't much room on either side other than these slopes and forest. So we wandered around for a while, eventually went off on this stem road, which a stem road is a road that branches off and then terminates. It doesn't have any thoroughfare. It's a one-way in, one-way out. So we drove in, found the only good wide spot to park both of our vehicles and set up our wall tent for base camp. Got that done. That was the day before. Did a little scouting around. Saw a few hunters just driving by on four-wheelers, side-by-sides, that type of thing. So if you haven't hunted, we're all a pretty tight-knit group. You can meet a stranger and it's like you've been friends for, 30 years. You chat, where are you from? Oh, that's a nice rifle. What are you carrying? Everybody's armed to the teeth, but everybody's happy and friendly and gracious. And it's just a neat little kind of club to be in. And what I thought was interesting, and even my dad commented on this, every single hunter we talked to or hunting party that drove by and said, "Hey, is that you guys camping up here?" And we said, "Yeah." And they kind of chuckled and said, "All right, well, you're going to have the place to yourself because no one goes down there." And they pointed to the southern slope just off of our camp. So where our camp was, that ridge wasn't even 50 yards wide, and then it plunged on the north, just sheer drop off. No human could traverse that without mountaineering gear. The south side was extremely steep and heavily wooded, but you could get up and down it reasonably. That's the spot I chose to hunt, or my dad and I both. And they just chuckled. I spoke to no less than 6 hunters that said the exact same thing. I could have recorded the first person. My dad came back to camp after we kind of split up in the morning. And he said, "Yeah, I talked to some people and they said, we got the place to ourselves. No one hunts off the road up here." And I was like, "Okay, cool. We got the place to ourselves." So opening day comes, that's a Sunday. It started with sleet at 6:30 a.m. when we were heading out. It was legal to shoot by then. It was half an hour before legal sunrise, or technical sunrise rather. So it's legal to shoot. So we went our separate ways. I went west, he went east. Nasty weather, just sleet all day. And then it turned to hail, then it turned to snow. I hiked quite a ways down that southern slope. Didn't see anything, got soaking wet. It took me, I hiked from 6:30 till noon down that mountain, and decided at some point, I looked down and it just kept going. It was like endless. The plunge down to the bottom, wherever that was thousands of feet. I'm like, if I get down there, I'm going to be hiking up this mountain in the dark. And I think every hunter makes that decision. Is it worth getting an elk that far down and, taking an entire day just to pack out one hindquarter? So I turned around, started side hilling it. Eventually came back up to camp around dusk. And that was it. Didn't see anything other than rain, couple deer, called it a day. Monday, pretty much same story. Brutal cold temperatures, just awful. Snowing a little bit, about an inch or so. Same thing, no report, just a lot of walking. Covered a lot more territory. And that was, at that point, opening day was the last time we really saw humans up there. We didn't see, there was no tracks in, no tracks out. I was just amazed. I didn't even see a granola wrapper, which even if you're in the woods pretty deep, usually you see human debris, a beer can or granola wrappers or something. I didn't see anything. No elk, nothing, no humans, few deer. So then Tuesday rolls around. That's day 3 of actual hunting season. Was about the only sunny day up on that mountain. I went back west again, cut out north, hit some cliffs and rock slides, turned back around, kind of frustrated, ended up coming back to camp on the road, just made a sandwich, grabbed some coffee, and decided, okay, I'm just going to go directly south of our camp, which is just 50 feet away across the road. Just plunge into the woods again, hit those slopes, and head east where I hadn't been. That's ground I hadn't covered. Same terrain, very steep, heavily wooded. I mean, there's points where you don't even have, if there was to be an animal, I wouldn't even have, I don't know, 15 yards of line of sight that I could shoot through. It was so densely timbered. No game sign, an inch of snow once again. No game trails. That was frustrating, not even to find a game trail. So I'm going down that slope, just plugging along, hoping to find something. And about 1 p.m., for the first time in, well, 4 days counting our scouting day, I saw a flat spot. It was a grassy flat spot, not very big, probably the size of two large swimming pools. And I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. I haven't seen this up here yet. I thought it was all straight up and down. So I moved down slope, get to this grassy area, and I see elk track from the day before, and I could tell because it was over the snow from Monday. So I knew it was at least a day old. Okay, that's promising. And I look down slope south, and I see more grassy flat spots, and it kind of went in steps. So from where I was standing, grassy flat spot, some eroded little slope. I mean, not very high or steep. Another grassy spot, another little eroded slope, and then a larger grassy area that extended out to a dense timber line. So I'm looking, I'm thinking, okay, there's elk have been here. This is where you would find these animals grazing or sunning themselves or both. And I'm looking around, trying to make that decision. Do I keep plunging downward? Because at this point in the afternoon, if I keep going deeper, once again, if I get an animal, number one, I've got to dress that animal out, get it hung from predators, because there's grizzlies up there, there's black bear, there's wolves. I saw plenty of sign, and there's cats. So if you don't get that meat either out, which wouldn't happen, or hang it nice and high, you're not going to find an elk there in the morning. So I looked and I looked and I pondered, and I looked to my left, which would be going due east, kind of in the direction I was headed anyways. And I see a game trail cutting pretty much along the slope going east, kind of heading up a little bit, which at this point in the day is, I wanted to start trending back upwards a little bit, gaining elevation instead of bleeding it off. And it was a very, very well-traveled game trail. This is probably where those elk had come in and out, and deer. And so I made the decision at that time, okay, I'm not going to keep going down. It's too late in the day. Maybe I can come back to this tomorrow early in the morning, at first light, catch some animals out there. I knew the location based on, compass direction and in relation to the road that went to our campsite. So I'm starting to turn and walk up that game trail when from down below, I hear 5 loud, distinctive thumps. And the first thought that went through my head, it was kind of funny in retrospect, was what is a person doing all the way out here beating on a piece of wood? Because it was so distinct. I mean, like I said, I've been hunting my whole life. I've been in the woods my whole life. I know animal sounds. I know what a woodpecker sounds like. I know what it sounds like when a deer, elk, or moose or bear is crashing through the brush. These were 5 distinct, measured, deep thunks of wood on wood. And I just thought, what is a person doing out here messing around? This is ridiculous. We haven't seen humans up here for 4 days. I haven't seen a single track or sign of a human. What are they doing all the way down here? There's no trails. Like I said, this was the first game trail I had seen in days. Well, the whole time I was up there. What is a person doing down here messing around? And then I just kind of shook my head and laughed it inside my head and said, no, why would they be down here? It just sounds like someone beating a big stick or log on another log. What is going on here? So in my brain, I instantly go, okay, this can't be a person. This doesn't make sense. But what kind of animal would make this sound? And I'm just rattling off, okay, elk. No, it's not elk fighting, rattling their antlers. This sounds like someone just thumping wood on wood. And it was very measured, just whack, whack, whack 5 times. Very measured, very distinct, There was no breeze whatsoever. So that sound carried really well. And I could tell it was coming from down in the furthest grassy area. At least that's where the sound appeared to be from. So now I've got my curiosity up. I'm like, you know what? I know I wasn't gonna go down there, but I'm kind of bored. I haven't seen anything, and I'm curious, like, what is doing that? So I start heading south towards where I think the noise is coming from. So I'm moving pretty quiet and slow. I get down to that second grassy area. So I go down, I kind of curve around so I don't have to slide on my butt down this slope. Get to that area and I stop. You know, as a hunter, you're not just power hiking. A lot of it is you stop, you look, you listen. That's your priority. Stop, look, and listen. And I tend to do that a lot and stay still for pretty long periods. In fact, opening day, a mule deer doe almost walked into me. She was about no more than 15 feet, maybe 10 feet away before she smelled me and realized that I wasn't a bush because I was completely camoed, and I'd been standing there still for about 20 minutes. So I did the same thing because I didn't hear the sound again. And I thought, okay, this is some fluke, maybe sounds carrying, whatever. And then I hear two measured deep thunk, thunk from the same direction. Okay, well, something's still there. So my brain had already turned towards, okay, if this isn't a human, this is an animal. I don't know how they're doing this or what it is. I've never heard a noise like this in 40 years of being in the wilderness. And other than if a human's out there beating around. So I had already turned away from that option just because it didn't seem probable that a person would be out there just goofing around like that. No one was setting up camp on these slopes. The terrain's too brutal. The weather's too brutal. I mean, having a big army wall tent in our vehicles to get into, even that was some hard living for that duration of time. So I'm like, okay, this is an animal. So I'm going to go into full on stalk mode. That means every single step I take is measured. I look at foot placement, sometimes going toe to heel. So if you roll toe to heel, you can walk on almost dry pine needles and make no noise. It's a very slow pace, you know, so it's taking me 15 minutes to cross ground that would take me seconds of just walking normally. Because in my mind, okay, I'm going to sneak up on what this is and get an eyeball on it before it knows I'm there and I spook it. So I'm doing that. I stop again because I haven't heard the noise again. Okay, once again, maybe I'm hearing things. Oh, is it the trees? Maybe the trees are rubbing or knocking against each other. So I stop and look at the tips of the trees. There's no breeze. There would be a small gust that would come through, but it almost didn't even wiggle the grass. And I'm watching if there's movement, if trees are making weird noises, because they can make almost animal noises, like as they rub against each other and they creak and crackle. Nothing like a deep measured thunk that I heard, but you know, I'm looking for obvious solutions other than what kind of animal do I know in North America that's doing this other than a person? I don't hear anything. No appreciable wind or breeze. I'm listening to trees, nothing. And I'm like, this is weird. And then a single knock comes again. All right, well, it's still there. So I go back into, you know, stalk mode, very quiet, stopping frequently, listening, just being observant. I'm getting a better idea that I know where this sound is coming from, and it's where I originally thought, which is at the end of the lowest grassy area I could see, probably within the tree line, because I couldn't see anything at this point. And I had a pretty good viewpoint because I had elevation. You know, and I would stop again and go, okay, as I gain a little bit of ground, let's just stop and think this over. Let's listen to the trees again. Maybe, you know, maybe I'm in thicker canopy and out there in that open area, there's a little bit more breeze catching these trees, but okay, let's just think logically and just still nothing. And I can see the trees way out there. I can see this little meadow. There's just no breeze. It was very pleasant, to have some sun out and be that still and quiet versus having sleet hammer you in the face for 12 hours straight. And as I progressed, I got about 2 more distinct knocks when I had stopped and listened for prolonged periods. I'll explain at the end of this what that meant to me and what I did not realize at the time, that moving so slowly and silently that I could, in the same manner, sneak up on a deer and almost touch it. I would hear a noise that loud and distinct, at least in my opinion, because I wasn't making any noise walking. And I never heard the noise other than when I had done the stop, look, and listen for extended periods. So we're talking 5 minutes plus. There would come a knock, and then I would, oh, okay, still there. Let's keep moving. So I'm moving down slope, and like I said, there was about 5 distinct episodes of single, and then that initial 5 knocks, and then the 2 that were right after. I keep going down slope, and I get to a point where now I'm on fairly level ground with this grassy area, meadow, if you want to call it that. So I no longer have elevation. And at that point, I am 90-some% sure I know exactly where this noise is coming from. I can see across this meadow. It's pretty much ringed on all 3 sides. The slopes I came down, the slope to the north, which was right behind me, and then heavy timber and a little bit of elevation gain on what would be the west side to my right. And I'm facing south, down slope. And I'm like, okay, well, let's keep going. We made it this far. At this point, let me go back and clarify this real quickly. When I heard those initial 5 knocks or thumps or whatever you want to call them, I was about 250 yards out, give or take a few, but I pretty accurately say about 250. So at good distance, Yeah. At this point, I'm definitely under 100 yards, probably closer to 75, maybe a little bit less, to where I think this noise is coming from. So I proceed forward, and as I'm walking, I look to my right, which is west, and I see there's this weird depression in the ground that it almost looked like it would have been a stream bed, but it was just this circular dip, like a half pipe, like skateboarders do. It wasn't really eroded, didn't have water channels, so it just could have been some weird little dip in the ground. I don't know. But it went downhill, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I'm just going to kind of follow along that. And I kept following it. And now I'm, at this point, directly facing this tree line where I had heard these noises, or where I think they're coming from. And I stop because at this point, I have a pretty good view towards where I think the sound is from, this screen of young growth pine. It's just like a wall. There'd been a lot of burns up there, and so you had a lot of new growth, and they can get pretty thick. I'm like, okay. Once I go through this little depression in the land, I'm out in the open. I know that, and I'm in full view of whatever the heck I'm, human, animal, whatever think I'm stalking or tracking down. there's one lone pine that was a decent size, and I was using that somewhat like a screen. So I wasn't up against it. I was still back, oh, I want to say 10 yards from this tree, but I was still staying behind it. So where I could see the meadow, see the tree line, but I had some coverage because the branches went way down all the way to the ground. And so this is, this is where it gets, I think my brain tried to shut all this part out. And this is only the third time I've said this out loud, and this is the second time to you. I know that once I get through that depression, I'm out in the open. So I stop, and I'm getting a little apprehensive. You know, I've gone face to face with black bear, with some I don't think had good intentions, and survived that. Didn't really panic because I know bear. I know kind of what their mannerisms are, what are their motivations, their body language. You know, whatever they're doing, you have an idea, right? They're either curious, scared, or they're hungry and you're a meal, or they think you are. But I'm thinking, okay, once I get out there, I'm now under 40 yards, closer to 30. Once I come out in the open from whatever this is, if this is an insane person, which I think you'd have to be kind of doing this to a heavily armed hunter with a bunch of other heavily armed hunters roaming this entire area. So I'm like, okay, this could be bad, but I've come this far. You know, I was hunting with an AR-10. If anyone doesn't know what that is, it's the big brother to the AR-15. So it's chambered in .308 Winchester, which is a decent sized rifle caliber. I've got a 10-round magazine loaded up, and I've got a second 10-round spare on my web gear on my belt to my hunting bag, just in case I have a malfunction. That's the main reason. I don't think I need 20 rounds of .308 to take out one elk. It's just magazine failures are the most common failure with a semi-auto mag-fed weapon. So it's just good to have a backup in case you have a catastrophic failure. So you would think I would be pretty confident with that, but I don't know. This wave of apprehension hit me, but I'm like, you know what? Just do it. You came this far. You're this curious. But it was really bothering me that I saw no sign of anything, no movement. I just thought I would see something moving behind these trees, but they were so dense. I mean, they were overlapping each other, these young green trees. It was just like a wall. And as I'm sitting here going through all this in my brain, okay, rifle's ready. I've got it at the low ready, just in case something happens. I'm not going to point it at the trees because I don't have a target. And if it's a human, I don't want to come out, you know, with my muzzle pointed in that direction. That's not a good policy. You know, number one rule of gun safety is, or one of them, don't, you know, identify a target before you point at it. And as I'm sitting here going through all this in my brain, there comes these 5 rapid fire, like machine gun fire smacks, wood on wood, deep, meaty smacks, but fast. I mean, like I said, it was like a machine gun, just boom, 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 boom. Just, but not like a stick. You know, you grab a stick. I could do that with a stick, but these were just, this sounded like a big, thick green branch or a log or something. I mean, but so rapid fire. And I kind of, whoa, I was like, okay, well, I know where it is now because there was no mistaking that this came from behind that tree line up ahead on the edge of that meadow. No mistake. Okay, and I'm like, whoa, that was a pretty clear sign. I know where it's at. So take a deep breath, go down that little dip in the land. I come up and got my weapon at the low ready, you know, so that's just pointed at an angle towards the ground, kind of midway between having it shouldered and hanging straight down so I can snap it to my shoulder, get the scope up, and be on target if something comes barreling out of there or whatever. Or if it's an elk, I get an elk. Great. Not that I thought it was. But once I lost that cover of the tree, I stopped again, and I'm just drilling holes with my eyes into this tree line, just at this point, just begging something to move. Like, show me something I can see. I just have to see something. I don't want to just barrel into these trees and, run into, I don't know what, something that may not be that pleasant. And I'm just drilling and standing there just still as a statue, questioning every, decision of my life. Why did I decide to do this? This doesn't seem like a good idea. I'm out here by myself. I'm very far away from camp. My dad knows roughly where I'm at, but not, we have radios, but we usually lose transmission pretty quickly. And as I'm standing there, this doesn't, sorry, this doesn't get any easier. I couldn't even think about this for days without completely breaking down. My palms are just, I'm sweating through my shirt. And that's no exaggeration.
It's no problem, Dan. Take your time.
As I'm standing there, just, I don't know, I'm just frozen. Like, what do I do next? Do I just keep advancing? There comes, it was like a grenade going off 5 yards in front of me. There was the most violent, explosive smash of wood on wood. It completely shorted out my brain. I staggered back from just the mental and physical shock because I was so close to that tree line, and it just, I was standing there, is dead quiet still, and then this sound. Yeah, it was like an explosion or being 10 feet from a head-on collision, people going 60 miles an hour in a car, but it was just wood on wood smash. Just, I mean, like I said, I fought fire, I've logged, I've dropped thousands of trees, big ones. I had them drop right in front of me. They don't sound like that. This was just a smash and just so loud. I mean, it literally shorted my brain out. It was like clipped, like the old school film reel. It like cut a moment out of my life. And the next thing I know, I went from that, just the explosion of sound, the shock, and then basically my brain comes back online as I'm backpedaling out of that meadow with my rifle at my shoulder, the reticle indexed on that tree line. And that was all automatic. And I thank God afterwards that I trained so much with firearms, not just for hunting, but, I've had a concealed carry weapon and a permit since I was 21. I'm almost 41. And I train religiously, not just in long distance shooting, but, close quarters stuff. So move and shoot and, ability to move laterally forward, backwards while shooting, reloading. I have drilled that for countless and countless hours. And I guess my body took over because my brain, it was all just rote training. I like I said, I transitioned from pure shock to that. And then I'm like, I'm awake again. And I'm backpedaling as fast as I can with that rifle on the tree line. And all I could think was, there was 3 thoughts going through my brain. Number 1 was, don't turn and run. Don't run. Don't run. It just kept going over. Keep your rifle up. Don't run. Don't run. But then the scared part of me that was still wanting me to run said, you're tripping, because my heels were catching on. This grass was very long. It was kind of matted all over the place. There was, twigs and stuff being blown in and that had been blown in. And so I'm catching my heels, but I'm like, you can't run. You cannot turn your back. Do not do it. Do not do it. But at one point I'm like, I have to move faster. I have to get distance between me and whatever did this. And so I made the decision, the split second decision. I'm going to turn and sprint 10 feet. That's it. And then I'm going to turn around, rifle up, backpedal, sprint 10 feet, rifle up, backpedal. And I did that. I mean, 10 feet's not much. I mean, that's almost just 3 lunges when you're sprinting. So lunge, 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 turn, rifle up, backpedal, backpedal, turn, sprint. I did that until I hit the slope again. And at that point, I just went hell bent for leather up that mountain. I had heavy gear on. My pack alone was, I would estimate with all the water and, survival gear and stuff, probably 35 pounds, give or take a pound or two. And then my rifle, spare ammo, all that stuff. But man, I never been so glad that I stay in shape year round, because this slope, especially down there, was so steep. The joke is it's so steep your nose is touching the ground in front of you as you hike up it. And I ignored branches, logs, everything. I just went uphill as fast as I could. But at that point, I still consciously said, you got to turn around. You can't just run. And so about every 20 feet or so that I gained elevation, I turned, put my rifle back down range, because I still had really good line of sight straight up that meadow to that tree line where that sound came from. And I did that over and over. I refused to just run and not see if something was behind me, because, well, that's the fear. Okay, I'm running, something's going to chase me. That's what, predators in particular do. It's just instinct. And I don't remember the run up that mountain too well. I didn't stop, other than it was literally 1001, 1002. That's all I did to pause, to whip my rifle around, put it down range, make sure nothing was coming after me, and keep going. And I ignored every pain in my body, legs giving out. And I was like, nope, feeling like my heart's going to explode. Doesn't matter. I just kept going and going and going, and just rinse and repeat. Stop, turn, check my 6, keep going, keep going. And after what seemed like a day of running up that mountain, all of a sudden I'm just panting and sweating and not really paying attention to what's in front of me, just what might be behind me, and just the thought of keeping going. And then I see a flat spot in my vision ahead of me. And it didn't really click at first. And then I was like, I hit the road. This is the road. And I lunged up onto that road, crashed into the embankment, whipped around on my back, and pointed that rifle down over the lip of the road, and just sat there in utter shock. And it was like, being a kid and you reach the safe zone or something. Didn't hear any sounds. Well, here's the thing. After that last explosive smash and me starting to backpedal with my gun up, there was never another sound. Not a single knock, nothing. It all ended there with that last explosive smash and me backpedaling out of there, with my gun up, ready to rock and roll. It all ended. I didn't hear anything as I was going uphill. I didn't hear anything as I was backpedaling. It all ended. So I'm sitting there in total shock, and I'm looking just dazed, like I'm on the road. It was like being lost at sea for, a year and then seeing like a ship or I don't know, something, rescue, salvation. And I was in such shock. I looked down, my boot's untied. So I set my rifle down and calmly tie my boot. And at this point, I actually don't know where I'm at in relation to camp. If I hadn't been in utter shock, I would, but I couldn't think. I couldn't even process that I was on this road again. And I looked down and this was amazing. Right in front of me is my dad's footprint from the day before, in the fresh snow from the day before, heading back to camp. And I just stumbled up, grabbed my rifle, and just started stumbling back to camp. I don't remember the walk back. It was maybe a quarter mile. I don't remember that. But at the same time, even though I don't remember the walk, it was all hitting me all at once. You know how your brain can replay things? It took me an hour to cover 250 yards. To give you some perspective on how slow I was moving, this wasn't like I just marched right in, heard some noises, and then boom, scared, run. This was an hour event of me hearing these knocks, me stalking towards the location. And then it was even long, not as long, but then you have the duration of me trying to get the heck out of there. But it all just played back in my mind. And I just was like, you idiot. Do you not just realize what happened? That you weren't even going towards this location until you heard those knocks and you got curious, and how every time you stopped and hesitated, there was a knock and there was nothing in between. There was no random sounds, no random thumps. This only happened when you stopped and you stayed still for a long period of time. How could you have not recognized that as deliberate? And it just, I feel, and I could be very wrong, but based on the location, viewing it as a hunter, this was a perfect kill box. This was like a funnel. Grassy area, thick tree line, ringed on all sides by heavy timber and slopes. Obvious elk and deer sign. They're going to want to come down there and graze. I'm like, this is an ambush site, and you're a sucker. You just got, out of pure curiosity, you got suckered into this. And that just did me in. Once that went through my brain, because if it had been a human, you'd have had to have one of the world's strongest men out there with a gigantic green piece of wood that would make a smash like that. I just can't even fathom. I've worked out and competed in weightlifting most of my life, and I like to think I'm strong. I couldn't do that, not on my best day. I can't imagine someone being able to generate that type of force to make a sound. That's what just broke my brain. And then the realization that this wasn't just random stuff. I mean, once or twice, if I heard a knock and I thought it was because, I heard it because I stopped. Okay, I could swallow that. But 5 times, not counting the 5 rapid knocks and that huge smash at the end, so that's about 7. Is that coincidence? And the deliberateness and it broke me, man. I got back to camp and I don't remember taking my pack off. I don't remember setting my rifle down. I did. I set them down very carefully by my truck. I climbed in my truck and grabbed my monstrous hand cannon revolver that I didn't have strapped to my chest that day. I don't know why. I guess just to save weight, and I hadn't seen any bear sign, and I had my rifle. I just grabbed it, set it on the console, and just completely, I don't mind admitting it, just melted down. I was shaking uncontrollably, hyperventilating. I had all this thick winter gear on. I turned the truck on, turned the heater on, and I was just, I could barely turn the truck on. I was shaking so bad. There's tears and snot coming down my face. And, like I said, I fought fire. I've almost been burned over. I've almost had trees fall on me. I've been in near life and death self-defense shooting situations to protect myself and my family. And none of that stuff shook me up. With firefighting, it's training. With logging, that's part of the job. You might be like, well, that was a close call. Same thing with, having a concealed carry weapon and encountering a violent person who means you harm. It's training. None of that stuff shook me up. I never had nightmares. This broke my brain. I just thought, why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? I want to leave. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to hunt anymore. I never want to go in the woods again. I'm done. And that was my happy place, the wilderness. I love going out by myself. I love spending time out there. That's where I find peace. That's where I go to reset every year. And I was done. I was like, how am I can't tell my dad this. He's not going to believe it, or he'll just kind of brush it off and explain it as coincidence, or just, weird sounds happen. Not in this sequence, and at the same time, I'm just thinking, because my brain at the time, I'm just like, okay, this can't be a person. I mean, the most logical solution is this was a person who was either insane or playing a prank on me. And then I thought about that, because I once I calmed down a little bit, I'm like, okay, how is that probable? Yes, it's the most logical answer, but it's like, okay, I'm at the top of a mountain, one of the highest mountains out there. I'm at the end of the road, literally. No humans in or out. I've got snow, no tracks. I've been all over this mountain. I've got those hunters saying no one goes down there. My dad has been hunting on the east side, so that was kind of the direction I was going. Same thing. Hasn't seen a single sign of any human. No tracks in, no tracks out, and no one could tell me you could come up from the bottom of that mountain and hide to play a prank in the middle of the wilderness on the random hunter who probably would have never showed up. Me being there and someone just hiding in these trees, and I'm not trying to make an excuse or anything. Right now, I'm trying to logically think of what did this that fits within the framework of what I've encountered in the wilderness for 40 years. And I'm like, it was at nighttime, if it got above 20, you were lucky. During the day, if it got above the mid 30s, you were lucky. This was not, you're not getting some 25-year-old YouTubers that are going to drive 2 hours up what you can barely call roads, hide in the wilderness, and survive out there just to, let's scare a hunter and get it on YouTube. Hey, maybe they did. I'd be happy to see it, because then I would be like, okay, you pulled a good one on me. At least I know you were a person. And I wouldn't be mad. I'd be relieved. Because at this point, there is no animal, like I said, deer and elk, what are they going to do? Are they going to pick up a log? No. Are they going to make those loud, meaty, thumping wood noises? No. Even if they were kicking something, it doesn't sound like that. A bear? No. Was he going to pick a stick up in its mouth and rhythmically knock it against wood and draw in this lone human? I'm just trying to rationalize it. And I tried telling someone else, and they said, well, beavers can make loud noises. I said, I grew up on the Salmon River in Idaho, and we have beaver that come on our property and slap the water. It sounds like you take one of those foam, noodles you float on, like kids have, and slap it. That's what a beaver sounds like. And what is a beaver doing 6,000 feet up a mountain with no waterways slapping on wood? It doesn't. I'm like, I appreciate you trying to work with me here on finding something logical, but I've exhausted the probable. Even the human, and even if it was, like I said, that person would have to be suicidal. If you're going to scare and intimidate an armed hunter or hunters, I mean, everybody's armed to the teeth. It's hunting season. No less than 2 weapons. Everybody's got a sidearm and a rifle. Is that it really? Would someone do that was even somewhat thinking right in their brain? And then to boot, how would they get in there? I mean, that one road was the only way in. There's no trails. There's no roads. It's brutal terrain. I mean, I survived it because I train year round for this type of stuff. And it kicked my tail. I'm still hurting. And this is a month later because I'll tell you a little bit more. I went back out several times to that, not that exact area, but close enough. So anyways, I just sat there in my truck breaking down and just like, oh my God, I think I just barely made it out of there with my life. This was, to me, an ambush site, and I was lured in, and it took me days to think of it like this, but I thought, okay, I think the only thing that saved me was I came out of that into the open with my rifle at the ready, and that final smash was, okay, yeah, you're armed. You're probably not worth it. Get out of here now. And that's what I did. And that's when all the sounds stopped. No more thumps or knocks or whatever you want to call them. Loud and clear. I got the signal. Copy that. And I got out of there. I think that's the only logical thing I can think of. Because it all stopped. And I just kept thinking, how am I going to do this? We've got almost a week more to hunt out here. I can't do this. I'm just going to have to pretend. Just tell my dad in the morning, like, oh, I'm going to go west and you go east. And okay, see you back at camp at dusk. That's our protocol. And I'm just going to sit in my truck. But for like 7 days, because I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to set foot out of that campsite. I strapped that revolver on. It's a big gun, that's supposed to be designed to take down 2,000 plus pound animals. And I never took it off again. In addition to always having my rifle at arm's length. But I'm like, I'm not going out. Didn't sleep that night. I can tell you, even though I wasn't afraid of whatever it was. So I want to clarify that. I didn't see it. So I'm not making judgments on what it was, but still, it's pitch black, no moon. And I just kept thinking, what if I wake up and something's staring through my window of my truck at me? I didn't sleep all night and understandably wasn't in a good mood in the morning. And I was mad. At this point now, I was mad. I hadn't slept. I was deeply angry that whatever this was did this to me. That makes me feel like I never want to go do something that I've done my entire life. This is what fed our family growing up. This is how we ate. This wasn't just going out and, oh, I'm going to get a trophy bull elk or a deer. This was our food. We couldn't afford to buy meat. We lived in rural areas. My dad works for the government. And so, by necessity of his job, we lived in rural areas, and that's how we ate. We fished, we hunted, we grew our food. Yeah, we'd occasionally go to the nearest town, which wasn't very big, and do some grocery shopping. But that was our primary food source. And I want to keep that tradition going. I think it's important. But now it's like, I'm never doing it again. Unless this is like a park or there's a ton of people around, hopefully armed people, I'm done. I'm not, even though me not knowing or not even making any conclusions to what this was, I'm like, this is not something that I ever want to experience again. I don't want this. I didn't want this to happen. But, I buckled down the next day and I'm like, I have to get moving. I can't sit here for a week in the cab of my truck just hiding and pretending. So my dad and I headed out the next day and split up, and I chose a ridge line to go up. And I'm like, I felt safe. I was high up. It was open, at least relatively speaking. There wasn't these deep, dense, dark areas down on that slope. So I felt comfortable. But, I was walking along and I was just pouring over this in my head. And all of a sudden, just tears were running down my face, just involuntarily. I didn't even realize it. And that whole day, I think I had stocked up on an elk. I didn't get a view of it, but it was loud enough. I could hear it crunching. If it was a deer, it was a big deer, and that was fine. But just sudden, there's all these grouse up there, and they come exploding out of the brush right in front of you. I mean, my heart stopped every time, even though normally I'd be like, yeah, it's a bird. And I got through it. We ended up heading off that mountain. We didn't move our camp, but we went to an area that was much, much lower, much warmer. There wasn't even any snow. It was just down to the north of our campsite off the mountain, where there was a lot more game sign. And we spent the rest of the time there. Hunt ended. I had to go back to Washington, work for a few days. And then I decided to go back on my own to the same relative location, mainly because my elk tag was still valid. Season hadn't closed, and hadn't gotten anything. But more so, I had to prove to myself that, I can go back. I'm not going to let this stop me. This time, though, let me tell you, I brought some serious hardware with me, and it was, that revolver was on my chest. That AR-10 was with me at all times, and I brought some other things that were much, much bigger and more lethal. And those were always literally within arm's reach when I was in camp at night, because there's no campsites. You just find a place like an old logging road you can back your truck into, and if it's not raining, maybe start a fire, but you're still butted up against just thick timber. And at night, you can't see 2 feet into that timber, even with a headlamp. It's too dense. And that was nerve-wracking, but I just had the feeling that, and I'm pretty positive, this wasn't a personal thing. This was an opportunistic site, if that's what it was. If it was an ambush site for, catching game or whatever, that this wasn't personal, and whatever it was isn't going to follow me, because that's not the intention. It's to catch something unawares or lure it into this kind of kill box zone and get it. And it's not going to follow me. So that kind of calmed me down. I mean, I could be completely wrong about all of that. I'm willing to accept that, but that's how it felt as a hunter, what I was being led into. Because that's what I would do if I wanted to get something. I've done it before. I've waited in the tree line undercover at the opening to a meadow at daybreak, just waiting for elk or deer to wander into that meadow, and they can't see me because I'm in the timber line completely covered, and I just make sure I have a clear shooting zone. It's the same exact thing. I've done it hundreds of times. But I was on the other end. I was just the scared rabbit. I mean, that rifle felt like nothing. It felt like I was holding a toothpick, because that's just what went through my brain. Okay, I've got this big semi-auto, heavy, decent caliber rifle, and I felt like it's not going to be enough as I was backing out of there. And it just, I've never had that feeling. Like I said before, I've run into bear, and some that I don't think had good intentions, but they kind of recognized that it wasn't going to be an easy process, and they eventually backed off with me without me having to do anything. But as I was back there, the only other person I've told I talked to, and they said, now, I know you want to go back there, don't you? Meaning the exact place it happened. And I think the pregnant pause I gave um, alerted this person to that fact, and they said, do not do that. They said, I believe you, and I agree that all these logical things you're trying to think of don't make a whole lot of sense. So you don't know what this is. You're going back there alone. You're off the grid. Do not do it. What are you trying to prove? And I'm like, well, I want to confirm what it was. I want tracks. I want sign. I want a visual, something. Just so if I found a bunch of garbage that, some humans have been camping back there, and it was this extremely, lotto winning chance that it was a human playing a prank on me, then confirmed. Then I can go back to just being like, I can hunt in the woods and feel comfortable without having to worry about something else. But I stared up at that ridge because I could see the exact location where my truck was parked from the slopes I was hunting. So as the crow flies, it wasn't that far away, but it took from where I hunted that last 4 days, the next weekend, it would take an hour and 45 minutes to drive up to that ridge because the roads are, switchbacks. You're driving a lot of the times 5 miles an hour because they're just so rough. And there was snow up there. It had been snowing more and more. And I'm like, at the very least, I'm risking sliding off the mountain and just dying that way. Is it worth it? Even with all this firepower, what am I going to do? What am I going to prove? And I was like, yeah, you're right. Don't do it. And I didn't. And I thought about it. And I just remembered how pathetic and small and weak and helpless I felt backing out of there, even with something that should have made me feel pretty comfortable. It didn't. And I'm like, yeah, you can bring in all the guns you want, but if you're going by yourself and it is something predatory that means to get you and there's more of them or whatever it is, or them, I don't know, you're outnumbered. Yeah, that could be meaningless, and so ended the hunt, didn't get anything, ended up going back out again, even though hunt season was over. I'm like, I'm just going to go for a long hike in the wilderness, totally different forest, national forest, but nearby, but technically separate national forest. I was going to hike out, spend the night in the woods, make a fairly primitive camp. So I didn't have a sleeping bag or tent, just a survival shelter. I was just going to improvise a shelter, start a fire, and just get back at it, make sure that I could keep doing this and not let that fear and reluctance keep me away from this. And ended up didn't turn out too well with it being so wet. And I ended up circling back after a 15-mile plus hike and just ended up getting in my truck and calling it. My body was so beat up by then from all that hunting and hiking. I was like, I got to take a break. And that was pretty much the end of it. I just found your show and started listening to these stories. I listened to some other channels and I was like, I got to talk to somebody. I don't know what this was, but I've beat my head against the wall of, logically, what am I left with? What am I left with?
It sounds like Sasquatch activity to me. While you were out there stalking the sounds, did the thought of Bigfoot ever cross your mind?
No. And this is why I don't want to tell my family, because I'll be honest. Ever since I was a little kid, I thought cryptozoology was cool. The Loch Ness Monster, who doesn't want to think that's real? Bigfoot, awesome. I would read all the books. I remember in 3rd grade walking out with a pile of books from the library. But I was always like, yeah, even as a little kid, like that would seem really cool, but we've never really found one. We don't have a body. Maybe they were real at one time, like Gigantopithecus, right? We know that existed, some 10, 12 foot tall bipedal primate. We know that existed. Okay. And they exist at the same time as humans. Well, maybe something that's carried over in our brain and memory and lore. And okay, that makes sense. I'm in the medical field. My sister says I'm way too logical. That was her expression. You're logical to a point. And it didn't. I mean, I don't know how to convince anybody that Sasquatch, my brain is tuned into one thing when I'm hunting and that's where's the elk? Where's the deer? Okay. Make sure you know where you're going so you don't get lost. Make sure, your brain is so occupied with maintaining safety and stalking and tracking. If I had thought Sasquatch, I would have never walked towards those sounds. I would have been running up that hill right then. Because when I've heard from your show and a few others, this is not something you want to go toe to toe with or be on the bad end with. But no, it didn't. I don't know how I would swear in front of the Supreme Court or whatever someone wanted, put a gun to my head. I can honestly say consciously and subconsciously, my only thought, that's why my first thought was, what is a person doing out here making these noises? This is ridiculous. How is someone out here doing this? This is stupid. And then going, no, it can't be a person. What kind of animal can do this? But I was rattling through all that North American animals that could, that are out there. Even after the knock, and I know that's from what I've read and listened to, the whole wood knocking thing is characteristic of Sasquatch. But I didn't think that. I'm just thinking, what is this? Like, I've never heard this before. This is weird. Okay, let's go find out what it was. I'm not really bored, but kind of like, yeah, let's go find something interesting. It's like, I'll be out hiking and see some cool, like, rock formation. And yeah, I'm supposed to be looking for animals, but I want to hike up to that. That looks really interesting. And I'll do that. But no, it didn't. It did not.
I think the first initial set of knocks was the Sasquatch letting each other know that there was a hunter in the area. And maybe the second set of knocks was more directed towards you.
When we chatted the other day and you said that I hadn't thought that, and it made me feel better because, like I said, my only impression, and this is a narrow, I would say, biased impression as a hunter, that I felt like I had been lured and funneled in to just this perfect spot. Like I said, it was a spot that if I could have gotten down there and hidden that tree line at, daybreak, that's what I would have done. Waited for an elk or a deer to wander off that slope right down to have a little morning grazing, catch the morning sun. That's all my brain went to. But yeah, when you said, I was like, okay.
Kind of sounded like they lost track of you since you went into stealth mode, and you mentioned the rapid fire knocking sequence. That kind of sounds like maybe that one of them got caught and maybe you didn't see it. I say that because I told you that story about me in my area where I snuck up on one and it grunted and then blew and it just kind of disappeared. It was so fast. But right when that happened, directly behind me, I heard the rapid fire knocks that you were explaining. Like something was caught. Like they're ringing the bell, but with knocks. I don't know if that's kind of how you felt. Well, you didn't see it, but I kind of feel like there was one around you and maybe it ducked down or hid behind a tree before you could get a good look at it. But maybe the other ones around thought, we're caught.
Yeah, like I said, I had tunnel vision. I was so locked into that tree line where I knew the sounds at this point were coming from. And I did have that thought a few days later that maybe because those 5 knocks preceded that loud explosive smash as I came out into the meadow. Was that right? Was that a warning to something else, or was that my first warning, like, you need to get gone now? And then when I ignored it and I was like, oh, it's right there, stupid me, like, oh, now I know where it is for sure. I'm going to get closer. And then it was like, okay, you didn't listen to this. How about this? And then smash.
Yeah. I just don't think they're used to people pursuing the wood knocks. I think most people just kind of hear it and don't really give it much thought. But with you, you kind of followed the sound and they kind of let you have it, or they gave you a good warning. Because if they definitely wanted to have you, they could have easily took you out.
Yeah, that just makes my hair stand up to think that, and from what I've heard, I listened to all the back episodes on your channel, and just, well, really only one other channel talking about encounters. And it's like, yeah, where there's one, there's usually more, if that's what this is, whether a family unit or however you want to describe it. I'm like, oh, geez. And I was doing a little bit of, when I was backpedaling, I barely remember this, but I did do a little side to side looking to make sure something wasn't coming in, out of, laterally at me. Cause there was that feeling that, okay, I'm in a funnel now. But not much. Most of it was just keep my gun on the trees, and just, if something comes out of there, just start shooting and don't run, because that's it. You're not going to be able to run fast enough with all that gear on to do anything except turn your back and get taken that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard. I hate that it happened. I know people, I mean, if this was something like that, like Sasquatch, I know people want go out seeking this type of thing. And even though I've had just a passing interest in this, it's always been an abstraction, right? I'm like, I've been out in the woods my whole life, never encountered anything. And I've been in the wilderness area that borders the town I grew up in Idaho is the second or third largest wilderness area in the continental 48. I mean, you can't get any more deep and dark than that, other than going to Alaska or the Amazon. I mean, there's places back there that humans probably haven't gone in hundreds of years. They've never set foot. It's too rugged. It's too harsh. It's too far back. You can't get there with a vehicle. In fact, motorized vehicles are prohibited other on the stem roads. You go in, the road terminates, you're on foot or on horseback. That's it. You're done. You can't take even a bicycle. That's considered a mechanical vehicle. It's illegal. And I just thought, if something like that is out there, this is the place it would live, within those wilderness areas. I mean, if someone's never really been hiking or backpacking or hunting in the Pacific Northwest, but they've flown over it in a plane, and you look down, it's like, oh my gosh, we're in a plane going 700 miles per hour, and an hour goes by and you're still staring at untamed wilderness. That's why I was always kind of like, yeah, these things could hide back here. I've been in these places. I could hide from humans for the rest of my life. No one would find me if I didn't want them to. Why couldn't something as smart as we are, that was born and lives and is evolved in this environment? Yeah, they could do it. I mean, I've never seen a cougar. I know they're around. I've probably been stalked by them. I've never seen one in the wilderness. I've seen wolf. I've seen bear. Never seen a wolverine. They're around. I mean, some biologists look their entire lives for wolverines and don't find them, even though we know they're there. So it's like, they don't have the level of intelligence we do, but they have instinct, and that's their environment. That's their home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you Did you find it odd that you didn't see any tracks or game sign or see any wildlife while being out there?
Um, not well.
Not until after?
No, I don't know. It's hard to say when you're hunting because that happens.
Yeah, it does.
You know, especially when the weather starts getting harsh like that in the uplands, the elk are going to drop down, which they did because that area we dropped down to, you couldn't walk 10 feet without stepping in moose or elk scat or a fresh track. I mean, I ran into moose. Bull moose walked out 15 yards in front of me. I was all camoed up and, standing there still, and he didn't even see me. Just sauntered by, like, okay. But no, I mean, that's not unusual. I mean, the 2 years previous, my dad and I were in the wilderness in central Idaho, and we were out there for the full 2 weeks, way back there. And we don't road hunt. That's something that was weird to me in this area is everybody road hunted. No one went even 50 yards off the road back into the bush. And my dad even commented on that. He goes, we've been up here like a week and a half. And he goes, have you seen a single trace of a person off the road up here? I said, no, not a track, not a piece of garbage, nothing. I'm like, and he's like, isn't that kind of weird? And I'm like, yeah. And all those hunters we talked to, they're like, yeah, no one goes off the road up here. Well, they were referring to the site we were at. In hindsight, I do think that's weird that verbatim, this is what it was like I could have recorded the first hunter. No one goes down there. That's what they said. Just like that. Verbatim, not like I'm not paraphrasing. That's what they said. No one goes down there.
Those are the areas that I would want to venture to, are the ones with the least amount of human pressure.
Exactly. So I guess I thought it was a little bit odd, but looking at, other than those grassy areas, which those were the first ones I had seen, and this is after crisscrossing that mountainside for days, deer tend to populate, and I did see some muleys and some whitetail, but no elk. Those tracks in the snow, as I was following those knocks, was the first elk track I had seen in 4 days. It didn't really surprise me, just kind of knowing how they tend to drop down lower when things start getting rough up there. They're smarter than people sometimes when it comes to that. That's what I kept thinking. I'm like, these animals are a lot smarter than us. They're hunkered down and we're out here walking through sleet for 12 hours. It was ridiculous.
Do you think you ruined their hunt? Like they were expecting those elk to come down that trail and down into that thick area that they were hiding in? Maybe like that loud knock was the aggression of one of them, kind of just irritated.
I would be. If I had been hiding in those trees for however long, and somebody comes bumbling down, I wasn't bumbling, but you know what I'm saying. I'm not as silent as a deer or elk is. Yeah, I'd be ticked off because that was a great spot. Like I said, that was the first. That's what kind of got me afterwards. Is like, okay, the first elk track I've seen in days were going down into this grassy area because that's what I was initially following before I decided that going down further just at that time of day was not worth it because that climb back out was going to start getting really prolonged and arduous. And I don't know if you've ever had to butcher an animal in the dark and then still have to make your way back to camp covered in blood. That's not a good feeling, especially when there's known grizzly around. I mean, wolves don't bother me. They kind of know what's up. Black bear, they can be a little squirrely, but cats are spooky. Cats are spooky. But grizzly, they don't care. It's like, oh, the dinner bell just got rang. All right, free meal. I'm not going to tangle with one of those in the dark with a headlamp on. So, yeah, it could have been that too. It could have been just, geez, you kind of mucked up this place for us.
Yeah.
I don't know. None of that went through. Like I said, until I talked to you the other day, none of that even crossed my mind. I just, that's why I was so stuck mentally, and took me a lot of nerve. Yeah, I had to really kind of ramp myself up to contact you, because I'm like, I'm at my wit's end to explain this. Like I quoted that whole Sherlock Holmes, and I probably said it wrong, but once all logical solutions are eliminated, what are you left with? The improbable or illogical, however you view that, has got to be the right answer. Because I'm like, I can't. I just can't fathom any animal doing this, known mammal or otherwise. And I keep going back to the human thing and just going, this terrain was so rugged and harsh, other hunters don't want to hunt it. Not saying I'm special. Maybe my dad and we just get into these crazy places. That's just how we do it. It just seems like we always end up in some crazy predicament in these wild places. But just to see no sign, I mean, someone would have, how they would have gotten in there in fresh snow and not left tracks or just to do something like that. I know we live in this day and age of YouTube and cell phones and people doing all kinds of weird stuff and TikToking. You would think like, oh, well, that makes sense. Someone's out there just punking you. I'm like, do you not realize where we were? Do you not realize that hardened hunters of 30 plus years are beaten up by this terrain, and you can die in a heartbeat from exposure, from an injury, that you're going to go out in the middle of the random wilderness where no trails or roads are, deep dark in the woods, and just wait to try and play a prank on a heavily armed man or woman? I think I would have had a better chance of winning the lottery, than hiding in the woods and spotting somebody out there. Because like I said, my dad and I didn't see there was no one was up there. And just, it's just so improbable. I'm trying to justify it that way. Just going, this had to have been just someone just being a maniac. But it doesn't make any sense. Those things just don't happen when you're in the woods like that. Or I guess they could. That's the thing. They could. It's not that they can't. Not that it's impossible. But that word improbable just keeps coming up through my mind. Just knowing how harsh it was, how remote it was, how much work it took just to get there and back. I mean, for someone to go out there and goof around and scare a heavily armed man. If I was a rookie, as scared as I was, I mean, I wasn't scared. I was terrified. I've never been terrified in my life to that point where my brain shut down and I went into complete autopilot, which thankfully I hope it was the right autopilot, which wasn't just running. It was keeping my weapon up and backing out instead of just running, scared, dropping my gear or something like that. But what are the odds?
Yeah. I bet that wore you out backpedaling up that mountain with all that gear and the steep terrain.
It really, I don't know. I didn't feel it. Once the adrenaline wore off, I was, you get that adrenaline dump. That's more exhausting once it wears off than the physical exertion you underwent. It's like I said, I trained pretty hard. I've been an athlete my whole life and done the firefighting, the logging thing. I know I live in a city now and work in the medical field. I'm sitting my butt. I still lift weights every day. When elk season's coming up, I throw on my gear and I try and get in 30 plus miles a weekend. I've got 3 day weekends. So I usually, the about 3 months preceding elk hunting, I'm getting about 30, if I'm really doing it good, 40 plus miles with all that gear on a weekend. So pretty decent shape, cardiovascular wise and endurance wise. But that adrenaline dump and then the loss of it, you're just like, it's like being Superman and then having kryptonite shoved down your shorts, right? You're just done.
Yeah, and like I told you before, don't give up on going out in the forest. I think it makes it worse on a person if they stay away from nature after having a bad experience.
Well, and yeah, and I really appreciate you saying that, and that's why I went back on my own. I'm like, hey, I got to get an elk here. This is ridiculous. I spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort. I need to get some meat to put in my freezer. And I still didn't, but a lot of it was just, you can't. This is your happy place. I'm not happy living in a populated area. And I don't always get, have a lot of time to take off to go out, traversing the woods. So that solid 2 weeks I take every year that's peace. It totally resets my brain. It resets my attitude. It just makes me feel like a different person. Yeah. And that day that happened, I thought that was all gone.
And you mentioned returning to the area, and I know that you guys talked about it not being a good idea. Do you think you're going to return to that exact location where the knocking happened?
I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe it'd be good to make peace with it. Like if you go back, take like an old bag of elk meat and like put it where the sounds were coming from. And I don't know. I kind of feel like that would let them know, sorry for ruining your hunt. And they're smart enough to understand it. They'll remember you. But then again, I could understand if you never want to go back in there because who knows what else you might find.
Yeah, I other than that morning of just being angry and going, okay, I got this, elephant stopping revolver in my rifle, plenty of extra ammo. I'm going to go down there tomorrow. The next morning, and I'm going to go down there and I'm going to figure out what this was. Come hell or high water. That wore off pretty quick. You feel pretty tough when you're sitting in the cab of your truck all warm and toasty and got all this firepower. And then you get out there and you feel like you're, like I said, a little rabbit being cornered by wolves.
Yeah.
I don't know if I will. I just wish, I wish it hadn't happened. I really do. If this was something, preternatural, like a Sasquatch, something beyond, just the normal animals I encounter. And I know people, like I said, some people want encounters. They want to find it. They want sightings. I don't. If that's what this is, I don't want to come toe to toe or face to face with anything like that. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
I've had that same scenario happen to me, except the loud knock at the end happened behind me right after it got dark on the trail that I walked in on. Like I had to walk back down that trail, so that freaked me out. But nothing happened, thankfully.
I can't imagine. Yeah, I mean, it really does. That's why I really appreciate you talking to me is giving an alternate viewpoint versus I was the prey getting led into this. Because that's just how it felt, man. Like I said, it's a little bit tunnel vision as far as, okay, I'm a hunter. I can see if something else was hunting, how advantageous this spot was. And just the the way the scenario unfolded, it just felt like I'd been lured in to this ambush point, and that just, I mean, I know, humans with all of our technology, we feel on top of the food chain, and when we got all of our technology and protection, sure, but when you're out in the woods like that, you're not. I mean, even if it's just a grizzly or something, if you don't have the right firepower, the right training, the wherewithal, and they get the jump on you, it may not matter.
Yeah.
But if something out there is just as intelligent as we are, that has the same, say it has the same predatory mindset and is viewing you like that, that is spooky. I would have felt better if this was a serial killer, psychotic human that was deliberately stalking me. That sounds weird, but I could take that personal one-on-one, and it being a human viewing me like for whatever sadistic purpose. That sounds crazy. I would have been better with that. Like if I found out later there's some wild man hermit, that's living out there that's, stalking humans and whatever, eating them or something, I'd be okay with if I discovered that. But not being viewed at as a prey item on an impersonal, I don't know, that sounds weird, because that's how bear can view you. I mean, like I said, I've encountered black bear that I think I encountered a boar up in the same area, and he followed me and basically stalked me and wouldn't go away. And I think he had more than curiosity on hand, the way he was acting. But it's like, it's a bear. I can see him. I understand what he's doing. I was well armed. I could see him. And I had enough distance and training that if he made a move, that he may have got me, but both of us would have paid the price. But I understand that. But to have the unknown of not seeing it and have this, what I think of as, this deliberate intelligence behind it that goes beyond an animal stalking and hunting and its instincts. That's all that stuff that was going through my brain, the next day when we went back out, and just made me I had to stop sometimes and just, I'm man enough to say, just let the tears come out and just go, oh my God, like, what just happened to me? What just happened? What is this? And not being able to explain it. I couldn't talk to anybody about it. I mean, like I said, my dad's the first person he's 71. He's still out there hitting it hard. He's the first person I would take into any battle or any situation with me. But that's something I just couldn't tell him. Because I think I just couldn't express. I don't know. It's easy to step back when something like this happens and say, oh, it was all coincidence of events. It was just, the stars were aligned. Those knocks came at just the right time. You thought that they were coming at this time, and it was just totally random, and your brain was playing tricks on you. And I'm like, I thought I was stalking this thing because I thought it was some animal doing weird stuff. I didn't think of something actually viewing me or intelligently assessing my approach and going, okay, well, let's get him a little bit closer. That never crossed my mind. I thought I was hunting it, or not really hunting it, because I didn't know if it was, you know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
I thought I was sneaking up on it and being all clever, and I don't think that was it at all. I got spotted pretty far out, and for me, so camoed up, I mean, you can see movement, but that was pretty good. 250 yards that's some distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can tell you're wrestling with yourself on, with all these other things that could have been. on what your instincts are telling you it probably is.
Yeah,
And I understand that
it's
because after I had my sightings, like I knew what I saw, but it's just like, I don't know, kind of like when somebody close to you passes away and it's recent, like your brain tells you that didn't happen, but you have to remind yourself like, yeah, it did. And then, it just kind of keeps happening over and over in your mind. I don't know. That's the way I kind of look at it.
well, it is. And I told you when we chatted that if I didn't have those like 40 emails I had sent out when I got back to my truck, because cell phone that you couldn't call out and text messages didn't work, but emails did if you had one bar, which we were high enough up. If the wind was like blowing the right direction, you could get one bar. And I started sending emails out to the only person I thought I could, because I just didn't know what to do. I was completely melting down, like in shock. And if I saved all of those, if I hadn't saved those, I would have thought you had like some waking nightmare. But this was broad daylight. This was 1 p.m. on a sunny day. I wasn't sleeping, certainly wasn't drinking. We don't do that when we hunt. We're not those type of hunters, that sit around, drink all day and camp, and then, let's go drive around, shoot a deer, That's not how we roll. And I already been up since 4 a.m. getting ready and going out it before the sun was even up. And, that person I know that I did tell after I got back that has a background in psychology was like, you're feeling that disconnect because your brain's trying to protect itself from trauma, because that blank moment you have in your brain was because your brain it shut down for a second to protect you. That's an innate response, because otherwise you just get overwhelmed, go into shock, you can't do anything. And he's like, your training kicked in and you were on autopilot. And he's like, that's more than I would have done. I would have run. I would have just started running. And I'm like, I'm not bragging or anything. I said, trust me, I was it may have looked coordinated, but inside I was just like, you're just the rabbit. This rifle you're holding is just a twig, and it's not enough. Even though I didn't know what it was, that's how I felt after that sound was, this isn't going to be enough. If whatever this is comes at me out of those trees, this isn't going to do it. That's not a good feeling. But
Well, I'm glad you made it out of there. Okay. It could have been a much worse situation if you had to completely run out of there full blast.
Yeah, it could have been. It could have been.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of sounds like you were one step away from having an encounter.
And that's, I don't know whether it was just general apprehension of, I can't see this and I'm going to come face to face with it. And that's scary. Even if it's a moose, right? If anybody's been around moose, they're more dangerous than bear half the time. They will stomp you to death and not think twice about it just because they're just surly or they're protecting their calf or something like that. But man, I should have just backed off. I fought through that apprehension of, what are you really doing here? Is this worth it? Like I said, when I came out of that little dip in the ground and heard those 5 rapid fire smacks, that's when I got nervous, and I should have backed out then and just been like, okay, this isn't a good idea. What are you doing? That did cross my mind, but then I'm like, well, I've come this far, may as well check it out. But you're right. What would have happened if I had just gone waltzing right into those trees?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'm glad you didn't, though.
I'm glad I didn't. I didn't want to. That's, that's that stupidity that, I'm not being sexist, but a lot of guys have of, well, I just got to man up, got to do it.
Yeah.
You came this far, just don't be scared, just do it. And I was like, okay.
It's a good thing you didn't take off running. I feel like they possibly would have chased you out of the area.
Well, and I've known that my whole life is, you don't, it's the same thing. If you encounter even just like a feral or vicious dog, in town, in a city, it's the same thing. If you run, you trigger the chase instinct. That's just plain and simple how predators of every shape and form operate. Doesn't matter. Mammal, reptile, you name it. You run, they chase.
And that's what they're known for, is following and stalking people. So I feel like they possibly not would have chased you out of the area, but would have trailed you.
Yeah, and that's the craziest thing. Once I hit that road, and even though I, whipped my gun around and was just sitting there just staring at the lip of that road, I knew nothing was going to come above it. It was more just autopilot once again. Just keep your gun towards the perceived threat until there's not a threat. Be ready. But, nothing was crashing up the hill after me. And I just kind of was like, okay, I'm good. Most predators don't want to come around areas that they know humans, routinely traverse, right? Even if they haven't seen humans, roads, animals recognize that. This is where those things go that shoot at us. We're not going to go there. And like I said, that thought that kept going through my brain that this was possibly a opportunistic ambush site. It's an ambush site. Why would they chase? Something comes in, you get close, you nail it, you take it back wherever, and you're done. You don't follow it all the way up a mountain. That's not how ambush predators operate, right? They may chase for a short distance, but if that prey is too far away, and especially if it's potentially harmful, they're not going to pursue it, right?
Yeah.
That's how predators operate. They know if they're, that's why the wolves and lions and stuff take down the weaker of the herd, the sick, the weak, the old, the young, because they don't want to get hurt either. You get hurt in the wild, whether it's a scratch or a broken bone, that's a death sentence. You're done.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like a very good hunting spot with all the Sasquatches being in there. And I say that because anytime I get activity, I don't see any game. Or if I do see deer, they're acting really spooked and they don't want to stick around.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I saw 2 muleys and one whitetail buck. But that was pretty far west of where I was, and they were actually up by the road. They were actually only 100 yards down slope from the road. They weren't, when I went way down there that first day to the point where I'm like, this is ridiculous, I have to go back. There was nothing. There was no tracks, no game trails. So yeah, it could be. I mean,
do you think your dad was in earshot of that last wood knock, the loud one?
No. No. He had gone way, way to the east. And, with all that timber cover, as far as distance, I mean, you could hear, you hunt, right?
I sure do.
If you're in thick timber, and even a gunshot that's fairly close, can be so muffled, you can't tell where it's coming from, how close it is. It's just like, that's a gunshot, and it could be fairly close.
Yeah, I agree.
So, no, I was way down there, and, other than those few grassy areas, it was so thickly timbered and dense. I don't think sound would have carried beyond you know, those tree lines. So no, I mean, he never said anything. And there was a couple times sitting around the camp, in the tent eating dinner. It's dark, nothing going on. I was just ready to spill it. Like, hey, I had something weird happen the other day. Like all casual. And then I'm like, nah, just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Do you think you're going to end up asking him or telling him?
I don't know. It'd probably have to be a rare occasion and the very rare bottle of whiskey to get that done. I don't think so. I don't know. What worried me though is since we hunt, we go out together, we make sure we have two vehicles. So, and this has happened, one of them goes down. We've got a backup to, whatever, get done, whatever needs to get done. That happened last year. But we split up. We don't hunt together. Well, I'll take that back. So the next day we split up. I went up on a ridge. I circled around another ridge, came back down. We met up. We hiked back to camp together. And I remember we hiked on the road and I knew exactly where I came barreling up that hillside. And this was only the next day, the same time of day almost. And I'm just like, oh, I'm looking down. I'm going like, that's where I came just barreling up that mountainside the other day. The next day, it had snowed heavily. There was 4 or 5 inches of snow. A cloud was sitting on top of us. Not fog, an actual cloud, because we were that high up all day. We found this it must have been a road made by a fire crew way back when there was a fire, because it wound down the slope. And it was east of where I was, where that happened. But my dad was with me, which that was pretty rare to kind of hunt as a team. But we were just like, yeah, let's go down there and check this place out. Okay. And so we fanned out and we, had a lot. We were out, parallel to each other. So we went, blast each other if we saw something. When we were coming out, we went east and saw tons of deer sign, no elk, spent the whole day out there slugging it out through the snow. And then we circled back to the west towards our camp and came up this slope. And then we came up on the road and I looked and I'm like, we about walked right back into where this happened. I didn't realize it because with the amount of snow and the clouds that were literally, it was like a fog, but it was a cloud, low-lying cloud, that, landmarks and stuff weren't identifiable. I just knew what direction we were going, but I didn't know where we were at in relation to where that happened to me. We came up on the road and I'm like, we were, I don't know, under a quarter mile from walking right back into that area. And then we had cut up slope. I'm just like, oh my, okay. That kind of freaked me out. I'm like, but at the same time, my dad was with me. Okay. 2 people, 2 guns or multiple guns. I felt totally fine with that. Yeah.
So what would you say to all the people out there that express the fact that they've been out in the forest all their life and they've been all over the place and they haven't seen nothing, no Bigfoot, no structures, nothing, anything of that kind? What would you say to them?
Keep your ears open and you should probably listen to your instincts more than your curiosity. Because I think that's what almost got me in trouble. Instead of thinking through this as in, okay, this is really bizarre. And instead of thinking like a hunter stalking something, think about what's actually happening. because that's what I didn't do. I didn't think about, okay, this is a really bizarre sound to hear out in the woods like this that I've never heard. It sounds very human, but once again, ran that through my brain as, is this probable or improbable? And even though I was moving so slow and methodically, I wasn't thinking as anything other than a hunter stalking prey. Like I said, that's where I felt really stupid and negligent, was these sounds never happened outside of when I stopped and stood there for extended periods. They did not happen when I was walking towards where I thought the sound was. They never did. And I was moving silently and slowly enough. There is no way any part of my movement would have masked these sounds, because they were very loud and distinct and atypical for a forest sound or an animal sound. That should have keyed me in right there that something wasn't right as far as my thinking. But I mean, what you said is exactly the perfect way of saying it. I've been in the woods my whole life. I've never heard or seen anything. Well, I've never seen a blue whale in person. And if no one had told me about them and I saw one, I'd probably freak out. So, you just got to be, you just got to be aware and think. I don't know. I usually, like I said, when you're out there like that, you're thinking through a lot of scenarios all at once. Your brain's divided into survival. Like, can I safely traverse this hillside? Can I get up that slope safely? Is it worth it? Where am I oriented towards to, what in firefighting we would call the safe zone, as in, where can I get back to where I have a point of reference to if I get turned around, or if there's a blizzard. I've been in blizzards where you couldn't see 20 feet in front of you. Do I know where the truck is? Do I know where base camp is? Do I know where the road is? You're constantly tuned into those things. And then, okay, of course, you're like, which direction is the wind blowing? Okay, I see some animal sign. Do I need to move uphill, downhill to keep the wind in my face so they can't smell me as I stalk them? Your brain is constantly going when you're doing this type of thing. And you do get that, I mean, at least maybe that's just me, that tunnel vision where when something like this happens, you keep thinking in those zones of those certain parameters, where if I had stepped back and went like, okay, this is not normal. Maybe we should take some time or back off and just watch and observe, or just leave and maybe not let curiosity kill the cat. I don't know. That's a great question. It's hard to answer though. But like I said, that's what's kind of bound me up, is I did not want this to happen. I wasn't looking for this. I don't know how to explain this. I
that
so
makes
I
sense.
don't know. I just don't know what other advice other than just be willing to step out of whatever zone you're in. If you're out just power hiking and my goal is to get up to this, this peak, and that's it, take a selfie of myself. Okay, that's fine. And your mind's on, okay, my legs are burning and I've got this many more miles to go, and you're kind of, in the zone. Well, if something weird's happening, it's just like communicating with people, or getting in a very emotional situation with someone like a family member, significant other. You sometimes have to really step back, physically and mentally, remove yourself from that one-way path you're on, and just stop and analyze the situation, instead of just kind of rushing in, figuratively speaking, into a situation where you're already kind of like, this is really not right. This isn't normal.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good answer.
No, that's a valid point. And at what point did you think the sounds were Bigfoot?
I honestly haven't.
Well, I mean,
Because,
like
I mean,
you found my channel, but like, what were you watching or doing? Were you kind of connected? Maybe that's what happened there, from what this person is explaining. I mean, did that happen, or did you just kind of already know about Bigfoot and just started
yeah,
thinking
like
more
I
about
said,
that?
I've listened to some other channels just because it's so interesting to hear people, just your average day people. You know, like I said, as a kid, especially, I was all over crypto stuff, cryptozoology, because it's just, especially as a kid, that's super cool to think there's a relic hominid or dinosaur living in the Loch Ness or Lake Champlain, Ogopogo, all this stuff. That is so cool. It's as cool as dinosaurs, right? And so I had that background, but I never really fathomed it or conceptualized it as being part of my reality. But after, and you, like I said, you hear about this wood knocking stuff and I'm like, okay, I'm at my wit's end trying to explain this logically. What are other people saying? And I've heard other encounters that aren't these crazy TV shows, where they're out doing all this weird stuff just for TV. I can't stand that. I won't ever watch that. But listening to people like on your show and like Sasquatch Chronicles, people that are just like firefighters, policemen, lawyers, judges, truck drivers, housewives, whatever, just average day people talking about this and completely breaking down emotionally and saying, I'm never going in the woods again. I drank heavily for 5 years after I saw this thing because I just couldn't handle it. That's why I went back and your channel popped up on the YouTube feed as recommended. And I went back and listened to all of them in that span of time when I got back after this. And I was like, man, what else am I left with? That's when I started thinking like, okay, yeah, if you've run through all the logical explanations, what else do you left with? And I don't discount or disbelieve anything that anybody says on these when they have eyewitness reports. I'm not trying to say that or think that people are lying. It's just, like I said, there's that part of your brain that remains abstract. That, okay, this is really wild, and this person is really emotional, and I can't. You just can't act that good all the time, to say something like that and break down, in tears or whatever, recounting a story. Something had to have happened. But it's just, like I said, maybe
I think you took the best approach regarding the situation, and I think a lot of other hunters would have reacted a lot differently, and they possibly would have took a few shots into the forest just because they were extremely afraid.
yeah, I agree. And I couldn't imagine doing that.
I'm sure there's people that have done that.
You're right. And geez, that's irresponsible on so many levels. I mean, what if it was a group of humans or a single human and they are just being idiots? You just committed first degree murder, manslaughter at best. And it's like, that's not what's been drilled to me. That's not what I've trained for. And if it is an animal and they're warning you off and they're not directly confronting and threatening you, that's not an option in my mind. You don't just kill something because you're scared. You go to self-defense because you are in imminent threat, or that thing or person is an imminent threat to you. That's it. I can't, but I think that's why I kind of have discounted the human element so much. Is even if you're some wacky, whatever, something-year-old person just trying to get a good little prank on YouTube, I don't think, other than all the scenarios I brought up, the terrain, the weather, the remoteness, you would have to realize that you've got a target on your chest if you scare someone bad enough to think their life is in imminent danger. And you're right. If someone's a rookie, they're new to hunting, or they're whatever, just trigger happy, like, oh, you're going to mess with me? Okay, I'll just crank a bunch of rounds into that tree line. I'll spook you off. Well, with high power hunting rifles, that can go through a lot of stuff. And I kept my finger off the trigger the whole time. I mean, as I was backing out, I had my thumb on the safety, because on an AR, it's like a thumb safety. You just flick off with your dominant hand. But I still had my finger on the trigger guard. I never put my finger on the trigger because I didn't have a target. Nothing was in my sights. And plus, you put your finger on the trigger and you trip and fall, you can, have a negligent discharge and who knows what. You could shoot yourself, or I don't know. But
I agree. I would have thought it was just people camping out there or hammering on things and possibly fiddling around.
that's what I thought. But then I'm like, okay, I would have been able to see them because this tree line was so dense, you couldn't really, there was no spots in it. It went from those little grassy areas to just, that timber was just, I can't express how dense it was. And that's what I thought, like, but it was just that wood on wood. It wasn't like someone hammering tent tags. It wasn't someone chopping wood, which if you've cut wood or logged or whatever, you hear sounds and they're very distinct. They have a quality to them. That's why I was saying, if it was like a dry branch hitting against a tree, that's distinctly different than a thick log or a green branch or tree. It's got that deeper, thicker sound than the dry, brittle cracking sound. And an axe makes a different sound. Hitting a tent peg makes a different sound. And because that's the one thing that ran through my brain. What is a person doing down here, beating a piece of wood with a piece of wood? Like, this is bizarre. And you would not want to camp down there. That would be a horrible spot. And I was close enough at the point where that final, that's what settled my brain that, okay, this isn't just people out here camping, was that final smashing sound. It was just so violent, so loud, so much force behind it. I can't imagine just the strength behind something like that. It was just like a bomb. If that hadn't happened, maybe I would have rationalized it all out as coincidence, or I just didn't see some people out there dinking around. But why would they be doing single knocks spaced out by 15 plus minutes? Only when I stopped. No, I think your input and feedback has been extremely valuable. It's made me feel, well, it's nice to have someone just listen without all the bias, of, you're imagining things, especially something that traumatizing that I've never experienced, out of all the dangerous, stupid stuff I've done, to be that shook up. No, I don't have questions. I just really appreciate that secondary point of view that maybe I wasn't being hunted, and maybe it was discommunication, and yeah, I got the signal that I needed to leave, but maybe not as malicious as I thought. That makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, it's rare to have a sighting, but just sometimes humans slip into these rare areas that just people never go into, and these things are in there, and they communicate around the humans and let each other know what's going on, and they immediately understand and know what's going on when they hear the knocks.
Yeah, I wish I knew. I wish I know what every one of those meant.
Yeah. Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan. Well, I appreciate you telling us your encounters and taking the time to get a hold of me and get on the show.
Yeah, man, I can't thank you enough. This has been really cathartic for me. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, man, it's no problem. And just keep watching the shows like Sasquatch Chronicles or whatever else is out there, and just keep learning what you can about it, and keep using the outdoors the same way you always have, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right. Take care. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. You have yourself a good night.
All right. Likewise.
All right, take care.
All right. You too. Thanks.
Bye.
I really want to thank Dan for reaching out and telling me his story, and it means a lot. As an outdoorsman, I really like hearing these types of experiences because most hunters are very knowledgeable and aware of their surroundings. It could be possible Dan almost joined the missing 411 list, but I personally feel the Sasquatch were only warning the others and most likely trying to spook Dan away from the area. I say that because why would a predator that is stalking someone let them know before he strikes? I just think it was a warning, and of course, if he would have continued into the brush, anything could have happened. Regardless, I am thankful you made it out and that you chose to talk about your experience rather than bottling it up inside. I think that only makes things worse, and it's only healthy to get back out and enjoy nature as usual. Dan, if you ever want to meet up in the future and do an elk/Bigfoot camp, let me know. If you enjoy my pursuit with the Sasquatch, then please be sure to like and subscribe. Anyways, that's all I have for today, and I appreciate everyone for watching. Take care.